My name is Amy Nicole. I'm currently diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. I'm from the Seattle Pacific Northwest area. My first symptoms, I only had one, which was a very small change in my stool. It became slightly looser. It wasn't that. I think for most people, it's not that big of a deal, but for me, I hadn't changed my diet. I had the first time I noticed it, I had just come back from Spain, and I thought, maybe it was from traveling. And so I gave it a few weeks, and it wasn't getting better. And my body. I listened to my body, so I said, "This is a change." And I went and talked to my doctor about it. Within a month of this first symptom, which again was very small, was just a slight change. It wasn't even consistent. And my doctor at the time thought maybe it was a food sensitivity. They did do some autoimmune testing, like for Crohn's or celiacs. Those came up negative. They did a allergy panel trying to see if I had developed any new food allergies. That came back pretty normal. And actually, at the time when I had mentioned it, I had my first CEA test, but I had no idea what that was. And that also came back normal. So I was really blessed to have a doctor that was very proactive and took this small change and didn't, ignore it and say, oh, well, it could be this, that, or the other. But they were just like, okay, your body, your body. I think it's really important to know your body, and what might be normal for somebody else. If it's a change, I think it's important to talk to your doctor about. Now, unfortunately, they couldn't get me in for colonoscopy. They did all these things. They did the fit test. Everything was coming back normal. He recommended me to a dietitian, who started looking at, what I was eating and what we could change that might, explain the stool change. And my doctor was like, well, everything's coming back normal, so let's really just make sure, do a due diligence, and say that there's possibly nothing else going on, maybe IBS or I think diverticulitis or anything like that they might be missing. He said, let's get you in for colonoscopy. I wasn't considered urgent. Nobody thought cancer. Like, here I was 39, like nobody was like, oh yeah, it's definitely cancer. It was no. So they're like, it's not emergency, we're booked back. We'll get you in the end of January, early February of 2020. And then COVID happened. And a week before my first colonoscopy appointment, they called in and said, this is not essential. We cannot do this right now. Anything that's not essential and not COVID related needs to be put on hold. So we'll give you a phone call when we can, make this happen again. And unfortunately, that was a whole year later. And I got this phone call in January, and they said, do you want to schedule this again? And I almost said no. I almost said, no, I don't really need it anymore. The problem's gone away. But there was this little voice that was just like, you know what? Go ahead and do it. The worst thing that they can tell you, well, quote unquote worse, is, there's nothing going on, and what have I lost? I haven't lost anything. So it's like, I'll go ahead and schedule it. So I had the prep, which was actually worse than the colonoscopy itself. But you know what? It's a small day, drop in the bucket out of all the lives in your days in your lives, so it doesn't matter. Was laying on the table. They have me in the twilight sleep, and I'm pretty out of it. And then the doctor's voice and her tone cut through that twilight sleep, and I was awake. And she had turned to her nurses and she said, where is her husband? Get him back here right now. Go call him. We need him back here right now. And I knew, like, they hadn't said anything, but just her tone, like her asking where my husband was, he needed to come back here, was like, something is wrong. Something is really, really wrong. I felt like my heart drop into my stomach, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, half awake, and the anesthesiologist lady is like trying to like put me back down into twilight sleep because like my eyes are open and I'm like starting to ask questions, and she's just like, no, no, but like that adrenaline started pumping through and was just counteracting what they were trying to do, and I was just like, so I didn't, feel anything, but like body wise. So it wasn't like traumatic or anything. It was just like I heard that doctor's voice and I knew something's not right. So they wheeled us back into this little, curtained area. My husband was already there waiting for me. She came back to talk to us and told us they found a 6 centimeter mass in my colon, which I guess is about the size of a chicken egg. It felt like forever, trying to wait for those biopsy results to come back. It just felt like forever. And when she finally called me, she said there was no cancer. They biopsied the tumor, but there was no cancer. However, they were extremely concerned, given the size, that it was either going to turn into cancer soon, or that they said sometimes they will see cancer in the center of these tumors and not on the outside. So they wanted to get me in really quick, but everything was indicating that they had quote unquote caught this in time. And that I would just need the surgery, and they said I might not even need chemo. Just get this out of me as soon as possible. The surgeon came in. I remember he came in to talk to me, and he wanted to talk to me. They got the biopsy results back, and obviously there was cancer in the center of this tumor, but also in 11 of the 21 lymph nodes. I'm also really lucky. My mom's was an ER nurse. My mom also has leukemia, so she hasn't worked in a little while dealing with that. And then my mother-in-law is a hematology oncology nurse. She actually works for Mayo Clinic. And so I'm really fortunate to have knowledgeable people that kind of helped me through the next process, because they they referred me to my regular oncologist. They said he will go through my treatment plan. I went and had that meeting. It went okay. Like, again, I ended up switching with him for for reasons, but he told me that I would need cleanup chemo. Everything, it looked fine. He wasn't hugely concerned. I actually made an appointment right after I talked to him with a doctor up at Fred Hutch Cancer Center to get a second opinion, because I wanted to know, I knew nothing. So is this standard treatment? What were my treatment options? Like, different doctors have different preferences. And so I just wanted to make sure I was getting all of the information that was available to me. So I just made a second appointment to do like a consultation with all my medical records to make sure. And that doctor also said like basically the same thing, like they would do the same kind of treatment. Just before I'm sorry, I had my first round, and just before my second round, I had a very rare side effect where I had jaw pain. It was the most excruciating pain I'd ever experienced in my entire life. It radiated from my jaw back up around my neck and felt like somebody had put my head into a vice and was squeezing. They didn't know what was going on. I didn't find out until I switched oncologists that this was a rare side effect for the oxyplatin. On top of the nausea, the cold sensitivity too was really bad. Chemo, especially the oxyplatin, made everything taste like pennies and dirt. It was so gross. So I'm a big water drinker, and I couldn't drink water because the taste would make me gag. So I started drinking Gatorade and Powerade and things like that to mask the taste. I also developed a really bad neuropathy in my hands and feet, and that came on really suddenly. I was doing fine, and then like the pain in my feet over like the maybe around cycle 8 or 9 started to get really bad. By cycle 10, I was having trouble gripping things. I couldn't do the dishes. I would, pick something up and I would drop it right away. they finished, they did my scan, they didn't notice anything, and then they sent me on my way and said, actually, they said, you're pretty good. We'll see you in 6 months. And I said, no, I want to see you in 3. I don't want to see you in 6 months. So he said, I don't think that's necessary. I said, well, I do. He said, okay. So he scheduled me for a 3-month visit, which ended up being fine. But my 6-month visit, my CEA actually crept to 2. And that was my first flag, was my CEA was 2, which is still perfectly normal. But again, through this entire thing, my CEA had never gone above a 1.7. And I remember having the appointment with my oncologist and being like, this is concerning for me. And he said, yeah, it's a little concerning for me too. It's a little bit of an increase. It could still be normal. So let's just schedule a blood draw again for 4 weeks. In 4 weeks, it was 4.6. And that was really abnormal for me. Still within the normal range. Anything under than 5 is still normal. But I was like, this is concerning. And he said, okay, yeah. He said, we could do another blood draw in 4 weeks. At this point, it was June or July. I think it was July. And he said, you're not due for your CT until October. And I said, well, I'd like to make that happen now. I'd like to make that happen now. I don't want to wait till October. And then the CT came back and they found something in my liver, but they thought maybe it was a lesion because they said cancer usually looks like billiard balls and this looked like a zucchini. So they didn't, at that point, they still didn't think, oh, the cancer had come back. Even though by that point my CA was up to like 5 or 5.5. So there was something going on. Stuff was increasing. And they did an MRI, and the MRI was like, oh, this looks more like cancer. And then they did the PET scan, and they said, this really looks like cancer. And then they did the biopsy, and it was cancer. And in between this, so after I'd had the MRI before the PET scan was when I met with my oncologist. And I'm still very angry at him because I was alone. My husband hadn't come with me. He was working. And I'd gone in to review the results. And he said, well, it's looking more like cancer. It's looking more like it could be cancer. And he said, just so you know, if it's cancer, mind you, they hadn't done the biopsy. He didn't confirm. He just said, if it's cancer, there's only a 20% chance you'll make it to old age. That's what the statistics tell us. And I walked out to my car. I got in, closed the door, and just broke down, ugly crying, ugly sobbing. And then I was like, you know what? Screw him. Like, I'm done. I'm done with this oncologist. Like, yep, that was it. This is a horrific journey in itself. You need to have a doctor who's good, you feel like is on your side. You need to have someone you feel like is going to fight for you. And that kind of comment where, I don't care what the statistics say, there's always somebody that's on one side or the other. I didn't want to hear that stuff, not because I was blind to it, but because I know it doesn't matter for me. The doctors are just guessing which side of the line I'm going to end up on, and I don't want to hear their guess. I just want to know, is this working? And if it's not working, what are the next steps? So I was done with him. I actually went back to the oncologist that I had my second opinion with, and she's fantastic. She's the best decision I ever made. And one of the first things she noticed was, she said, this lymph node system near your kidneys is increasing. It's getting larger. We think that there's cancer in there. And that was something that was like my first oncologist hadn't even looked at. They were just looking at the current scan. They weren't looking at all of the scans, so they missed that this lymph system was getting larger and probably had cancer in it. And it was one of the first things she noticed. And I was just like, well, this was a good decision to make. She was doing the CTs every 8 weeks. She put me on, I did the full FOXIRI, which was, they just added another chemo. And I did that for a little while, but it wasn't growing, but it wasn't shrinking. So then they added the Erie, and it started to shrink. And I was really miserable on the oxyplatin. It was terrible. I was sick, like all the time. I started my neuropathy in my hands had gotten better, but in my feet had gotten worse. February 2023. Stuff was shrinking, stuff looked good, but it wasn't going away. So they're like, let's go ahead and do surgery. Fantastic. Did the surgery. They removed that lymph system that was questionable, which did have cancer in it. And then they did ablation on my that one spot. And I'm sitting there post, and then my oncologist was like, okay, we're going to start doing the Cigna test to see if you have circulating tumor DNA in your blood. And 4 weeks later, that popped up positive. And she was like, okay, we usually wait 8 to 10 weeks before we do the first CT, but let's go ahead and we're going to do ahead and do an MRI. My liver lit up, unfortunately. And then they did PET scan, and they're like, there's a couple of spots now. There's not just one. I went back on the full Erie, full Erie, for 6 months with, no shrinkage, very, low growth, stuff slowly growing. And then I started this trial in December, and the trial has been fantastic. Stuff isn't getting better, but it's not chemo. It's immunotherapy, and I feel like I've gotten my life back with this immunotherapy. The difference between immunotherapy and chemo is like night and day. Like, I'm not sick, I'm not tired all the time. I'm able to go out and do normal stuff. I feel like I'm able to have a little bit more of a normal life. It's really been fantastic, but still fighting. Again, this is why it's really important to have a doctor that's on your side. It's fantastic. I didn't ask. She just went ahead, and as soon as my reoccurrence happened back in, um, I guess May or June of 2023, when they officially said my cancer was back, she went ahead and signed me up for every single trial she could that they offered. She didn't ask me. She just did it because she knew that, one, these trials can have years wait list. And two, she figured, if I, wherever I'm at that point, at least I'm on the wait list. So I didn't know that she had done this until December, where she was like, I did this. I have all these trials that you're up on. You don't have to say yes to anything. I just wanted your name on the list so that if a spot popped open, we could at least have a conversation about it. And I think it's really important for people to remember that when it comes to your treatment, you do have a say. Like, your doctor may have a recommendation, this is the treatment we want, but you absolutely have a say in where your treatment is going. Like, you can tell them, I don't like that. I want to find an alternative. I think a lot of people are intimidated, like they don't want to tell their doctor what to do, but it's important to remember your doctor is working for you and to find someone who's working for you. I think the overall message is, one, know your body and trust your body. Just because you think that if something changes and there's no warrant for that change, um, go to your doctor, talk to your doctor, get rid of that fear. Know your body and know what is normal for your body. And if there is anything that comes up that's abnormal, don't be afraid to go into your doctor and advocate for yourself. Be like, this is not normal for me. I really would like to find out what is going on. It's not normal. Because I think especially with cancer, a lot of times, by the time, a lot of people just sit and they suffer in silence, and by the time it starts really rearing those big ugly symptom heads, then it's often already in advanced stages. And I think that a lot of times these early symptoms people just ignore, not just because they're busy or maybe because they're afraid, but I think primarily they think this is normal, or it's not big enough for me to warrant seeing a doctor. Like, my arm isn't falling off, so I really don't need to see them because, I have a little pain in my chest every now and again. Like, if it's not normal for you, speak up, say something. Um, it, the best thing that'll happen is they tell you it's nothing, and the worst thing that could happen is they tell you it's something, but maybe they found it before it's really something big and problematic.